A tomb. The final resting place. Usually. But such was not the case for the famous Cardinal Richelieu. He was buried here in the Sorbonne College in Paris almost 300 years ago. And his remains lay undisturbed for over a century and a half. But then came that spectacular upheaval known as the French Revolution. The King and Queen of France lost their heads to the bloody blade of the guillotine, as did thousands of others. But living victims, it seems, weren't quite enough to slake popular thirst for violence. The mob broke in here, ripped open the cardinal's tomb, and tore from it the cardinal's body, which was quite well preserved. "Give us the head," roared the mob. And that's just what happened. The cardinal's head was chopped from his body and thrown to the crowd. They laughed and tossed it about and finally threw it out into the street, to the delight of a group of children playing there. They proceeded to use the cardinal's head as a football, kicking and passing it through the streets of Paris until it split in two. Some 70 years passed before the two halves were finally recovered and returned here. Unfortunately, there was no body to attach it to. Most of that had been dismembered by the mob, scattered, and irretrievably lost, except for one finger, the ring finger. It and the cardinal's head are about all that share this magnificent tomb now. But then, the most peculiar things sometimes happen to people once they are dead. Temporary tombs made of straw may seem an unusual way to honor the dead. In Korea, however, such structures permit the kin of the deceased to perform a double burial ceremony, one for the body, and then, 3 years later, another ritual for the reclaimed bones. It is an ancient rite called Cho-bu. The bones of the dead are carefully resurrected from a grave built above ground. The faithful believe that once free of earthly flesh, the deceased may more easily complete the journey to heaven. To strip away any remaining flesh, the bones undergo a series of ritual cleansings by the immediate family. Once the gravesite is thoroughly searched and every bone recovered and cleaned, they are reassembled to create a complete skeleton. For mourners, the extended 3-year period of grief ends as the carefully wrapped skeleton is prepared for its final journey. The funeral procession is far from somber. Bedecked with flowers, the bones are transported to the narrow grave where they will remain, to be disturbed no more. Such double burials are rare in Korea now, practiced only in a few remote locations. For the faithful, however, the tradition assures the rise of the spirit to heaven as surely as smoke seeks the sky. In Japan, one problem with dying is finding a place to be buried. As cities become more crowded, the traditional Japanese respect for their ancestors, as demonstrated here during the annual Festival of Souls, has created a new problem. There is simply not enough available space in Tokyo's public cemeteries for all those who want to be buried there. And there is no room left to create more cemeteries. Every possible location is already in use. To allocate what space there is, the government conducts an annual lottery. The luck of the draw determines who, among more than 10,000 applicants, will be allowed to purchase the available burial plots. Only slightly more than 1,000 are for sale each year. The demand is created by the desire of older people to be buried near their living relatives in Tokyo. Otherwise, the elderly fear their graves will not be visited frequently. For every winner, there are 9 losers. All, however, are more than willing to pay $600 for a plot close to home. For the aged, the problem is to survive, to try again next year. In New Orleans, a concern for the well-being of the deceased is on elaborate display at the Metairie Cemetery. Because of the generally swampy soil around the city, above-ground tombs have become a traditional way to pay last respects. It was not respect, however, that motivated the gentleman credited with the creation of this ornate burying ground. All this land was once the site of a famous racetrack and an exclusive jockey club. Back in the 1870s, one Charles T. Howard applied for membership and was refused. Or so the story goes. He had the money, but according to whispered gossip, he wasn't a member of the proper political party. He swore revenge. Someday, he said, "I'll buy your damned racetrack and turn it into a cemetery." Eventually, it was Howard who helped form the syndicate that did exactly that. They bought the racetrack and the exclusive jockey club and transformed it all into this cemetery. And that is how Charles T. Howard finally gained permanent membership in Metairie. Believe it or not.